Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on.
Oh, this is an honor. Thank you. I can't wait for us to dive in today.
I know, and like even just as we were speaking leading up to pressing record, I'm like, oh, like feeling the juices. Oh my God, I have no idea what's going to show up, but I'm excited.
Yes.
Um, and I want to firstly honor you and appreciate you for the work that you do in the world because I am one of your biggest fans of your podcast, Love, Sex, Desire. And it's it shares such important topics around something that can be quite taboo a lot of the time. Things that are people. I feel like it's, and even going deeper into this work, I feel like it's conversations that people listen to but don't tell anyone they're listening to them. You know, there's like even things like that. And so
Yes.
I love the work that you do. Thank you so much for bringing it into the world and showing up.
Oh, thank you. And I love that you say that because it was one of the reasons I specifically started a podcast was for the discretion because I had a lot of people say, I'm even too afraid to like your post in case someone sees that I like your post.
Oh,
And I was like, huh, people still like think that way or people are still having those kind of challenges like
mhm.
all right, so what's one way I can actually help get this information out where I'm honoring a level of discretion for people? So, yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, and I think it's important too because then people are starting to feel like it's more okay to have these conversations because other people are feeling the same, or other people are like, oh, I'm feeling like that too, or and it opens up minds as well. Like today,
Yes.
even on my morning walk, I was listening to one of yours around like kinks,
Hmm.
and I laugh because even for me, like the conversation, it was with Arden,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Arden Lee. Yes.
ardently, and it was like, whew, like new things that I hadn't like thought about, and like yeah, and I think that stuff is great that people have access to these kind of topics. So what made you start like going into like love, sex, desire, that kind of your own journey? Like what led you to that place?
Yeah, I kind of felt like I was forced, if I'm to be completely honest. Obviously, it's, accumulation of my entire experience. The very quick story would be, my professional career started as a group fitness teacher for about 8 years. Um, but then I had what I call like my quarter life crisis, my spiritual sexual awakening, which resulted in me ending, a marriage. I was also a new mama at that stage. And Vipassana was the catalyst for me. And also within the Vipassana came, I fell in love with a woman. So, in one parallel, I'm having my own spiritual sexual awakening. And then I kind of get guided to do yoga. And, and then from yoga, I also had a fascination with the Enneagram, which is a personality typing system. Um, and I literally Googled deep coaching because I was craving the depth and I knew I had a skill set around coaching. And sure enough, there was actually a certification for deep coaching that specialized in the Enneagram. And that was this year-long training, which was ultimately about presence. And then from there, my work sort of started to morph, at least the movement side, from, yoga to then this sacred dance is what I call it now. Um, and through the sacred dance, there was just this like aliveness pulsing through my body. I'd been kind of doing the spiritual path, been doing so much work on myself. And I think we can get so serious in that. There was kind of this level of boredom starting to kick in. And I just remember like, oh my God, I just need like this place to unleash, but I need it in a way that no one's going to misinterpret it like what this is. I don't want to be around, drunk people. I don't want to be like hit on. I just need a safe space where I can fully unleash, and it doesn't need to fucking mean anything. And that was kind of the work that became sacred dance. But through that, because of my own journey through like the marriage and then through the sexual awakening, the thing that people started coming to me with was like questions like, do you have any resources for sexual awakening? Can you speak to this? Can you speak to that? And I was like, oh my God, I don't have any training. I don't have any qualifications or certifications specific to this realm. Although I had like so many skills around embodiment, around presence, like the really simple things, that it was just transferable to that realm. And someone was like, when are you please going to start talking about sex explicitly, not just to us, like your friends? And I was also helping a lot of women kind of, birth their soul work. And then next thing you know, I'm doing a podcast called Love, Sex, Desire. The other thing was like, I didn't just want to talk about sex. And to be honest, if I were, like, I get really bored pretty quickly. I'm like, there's so much more to it. And I prefer to delve into, I do a lot of work around the erotic woman. And to me, the erotic is something bigger. Sex is like one piece of the pie. The erotic is about like the aliveness within us, and it includes all the challenges of living and loving and working. So that is how that came to be, and that was back in 2013.
Wow. Okay, cool. Let's go.
Yeah.
This is exciting. Like, my whole heart was just like exploding as you were talking. And the part where it exploded and I started to get chills was when you said it all, like, it gets so serious. It gets so serious, and we're like, oh, like, fuck, I just need to like tap out almost. But you don't want to tap out fully. It's like this weird thing of like, it's just so serious.
Yeah.
So sacred dance for you, finding that element, was that a way in which you could let go of the seriousness of it? Like, what did that do for you?
Yeah, it was. Like, at that stage, I'd been teaching yoga for about 4 years, and I knew I was getting restless on the mat. Like, there was just, I was almost forcing myself to just stay with it, keep following through. Like, depth comes when you kind of just dive in deep to one thing, like keep going. But the truth was, there was just something, I was getting that itch. And I happened to go to a 5 rhythms class, and at that 5 rhythms class, we did this particular practice, which I later learned actually isn't 5 rhythms. This woman was just kind of injecting her own juju. And it was a blindfold experience. And just in that one moment, it was suddenly like coming into deep contact with my own intuition, but my own desire. Like, the pulse was so strong. And I remember my body wanted to move in certain ways. And I was so resistant to just like, oh my God, I can't see, and I'm going to bump into other people. But every time I'm like trying to control this, like, I can feel it building up anymore. Like, the suppression was just it was so physical in my body. And I finally just went, fuck it. Let's just surrender to this thing that wants to move through me. And I finished that evening just like, oh my God, it felt so good to not be told what to do with every breath and every little piece of my anatomy on like these 4 little corners that is my yoga mat. And I realized they both have a place. The beautiful thing, I think, is when you're on this journey of self-development and really seeing yourself more accurately and honestly, you have to interrupt your habitual patterns. And so I guess that is the seriousness for it, unless of course your pattern is to be serious. But you kind of like, you're taking the observer role for a little while and just kind of watching what you would usually do and kind of inquiring. There's so much inquiry in that process. And I think it's important because you're creating new ways of being that feel very foreign and just really strange and weird, but they start to yield different results. But because your personality is so strong, you think of those pathways as being like, they're deep grooves, and it's so easy just to like drop back into them and start reacting instead of actually being deeply present with the moment and responding to that. And sacred dance for me just kind of gave me permission to get back into contact with the part of me that is wild. Some would describe, this is the feminine. And I would too, and I realized I just had a warped relationship with her. It was like this full circle. She was just too wild, too reckless, and a troublemaker. And then all this yoga, all this linear movement, all this stillness meditation, I didn't realize at the time that I was cultivating what some would describe your masculine essence, particularly in spirituality terms. And so once that was kind of really good in me, I could come into right relationship with the part of me that is just wild, but I have like a deep trust for her now. And so sacred dance became this avenue of just feeding this part of me that I know needs to be fed. Like, I would go as far to say, because I didn't have a conscious relationship with her, or even like a right relationship with her, it was the cause of a lot of the breakdown in my marriage.
Mm, I absolutely resonate with that because I've done the same thing for so long, cultivated through fasting, through stillness meditation, through like, I'm very masculine in my spiritual self. Like, I want to go out in nature and be in solitude and meditate for hours. And like, like
Yeah.
that. And I have had such a strong masculine essence, and dance, sacred dance was literally the thing for me too, to unnumb my sexuality, like unnumb my body so I could feel again that the womanness and the feminine within me. I think it's been such a catalyst for me to explore that realm too. What is
Mm.
what is the erotic woman? Like, what is that?
Mm. Great question. I think we all have her. I think she's, like I said, to me, erotic simply means aliveness with also a flavor of sexuality, if that's included. Um, the erotic woman for me is like deeply connected to your body. She knows how to be fed, and it is something that you can cultivate that is like just for you and isn't necessarily always shared with another. Because I think the moment we start talking about sexuality, like, we naturally think this is how we relate to someone sexually,
Mm-hmm.
but we all have a sexuality that is, ours. And so, yeah, for me, the erotic woman, she just includes all these particular elements. She just knows how to be deeply present, deeply alive, and she's so embodied as well in her sensuality and her sexuality, and she knows how to like offer that as a gift to someone in the world.
Mm. I love that. Like, how do we offer the erotic woman as a gift? What does that look like?
That's going to look different for everybody.
Mhm.
I do think though, and what I have seen, it seems to be that dance is the gateway to her.
Mhm.
And I think for all women, just as you said, something just unlocks in your body. It is like
Mhm.
a remembering. Um, and you can feel the difference, at least I can anyway. You can see it and feel it in other people.
Yeah.
That cultivation within themselves, I mean, it's so rooted in like a self-worth, that we then, we are able to like just offer it to someone else, like intentionally. And I think this is where intention, it just is. You're not doing it for show. You are
Mm.
not doing it to prove anything. You are not doing it to get anything. It is like a pure one-way channel of
Mm.
an offering. Yeah.
Do you think there's a line between offering that as a gift and then keeping parts of it to yourself, or to behind closed doors, or to a sacred relationship? Like, is there a line that you need to be aware of?
Just your own personal one. Like, I'm not a big believer that you being at peace with your own, erotic essence, or you being like really confident in it, looks like you throwing it out to the world, particularly in this, social media climate.
Mhm.
It's about discretion.
Mhm.
This is about, your own. I'm a big believer in privacy as well. I really don't think that it has to look any particular way. I just think you as an individual, you get to navigate this. It's forever a dance, and you yourself are going to know when you've crossed a line that starts to feel a little wonky. Um, but it's not to say that that line is always permanent. That
Mhm.
line can always be moving for you.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. How has this, or finding this erotic woman within yourself, how did that shift sex for you in your sex life?
The biggest thing is that I became definitely less dependent on
Mm.
somebody else to feed me, or I became less dependent on somebody else to meet me in the way that I wanted to be met,
Mm.
because suddenly I'm now self resourced. I know what is required to keep me juicy and it's actually separate from someone else. So it's not to say that, of course, I don't want to be fed in partnership, because I do, but it has like, there's just a different flavor about it, because I'm not so reliant on this one particular person to fulfill me in a way that I think only they can fulfill me. It's like, hell no. There's so much more expansion available here. So I would say it's, gifted me freedom in that sense.
Beautiful. Is there ways is there ways in which you practice, or you show up to your own like solo practice to really cultivate that erotic woman, and keep it evolving and progressing?
Yeah, it's sacred dance for me.
Yeah.
It's the thing I turn to over and over again. And I mean, the moment I start to feel even like frustrated or irritated, or I can just feel like I'm, my fuse is getting a little bit short, like I know there's either something I'm not expressing around what I want, or what I don't want, essentially. And I need to like just come back into me, let myself feel all the feelings, and then gift it to somebody else, maybe.
Yeah, beautiful. And so are you married now? Are you in a same-sex relationship now, or are you in a heterosexual relationship? Like, where did your dance go from when you were divorced into a relationship with a woman?
Well, that came after actually the relationship with the woman. Right now I'm with a partner. We've been together for, I'm just looking at the calendar on my computer. Anyway, like 18 months. It'll be 2 years early next year. And no, I think, being with a woman, I think if a woman has that desire, I'm like, you got to go there. I think there are so many gifts in being with another woman. For me, it was, man, just falling in love, one, with my own womanhood and my own body. Because suddenly any judgment I had of myself, I was indirectly judging her. And that was not at all like the case. There was no separation in that sense. It was, just a wonderful awakening experience. And I remember after that relationship ended, I sat in okay, so like, what now? Am I attracted to women or am I attracted to men? It was this real conflicting experience, because suddenly, well, I'm not with a man and I'm not with a woman. Like, what is this? And this is where the sacred dance really started to be very, very helpful, because it was about tuning into my desire. Like, how do I experience desire in my body? There was a period of exploration of just witnessing it, not having to act on it, but just notice when I'm speaking with this person over here, like, is this just a genuine heart connection, or am I actually feeling a sexual, chemistry here? And what do I want to do with that? Because I don't believe you need to act on chemistry all the time. And particularly if you want a thriving relationship, definitely don't act on chemistry. You need a lot more than just chemistry. But there was kind of this little torment going on about who I should be attracted to and who I shouldn't. And until I started to give myself like the gift of experiencing my desire in fullness without having to act on it, it filled me up in new ways, which I found really, really fascinating. Because again, I think this comes to freedom. It's like, all right, so if I'm not being led all the time by this intense pull towards people, like, what else is required for relationship? And so I then went through a period of being with a man, and that was just like, I hadn't been with a man for years, and I just remember going, how, like, I don't know how my body went so long without cock, essentially. Like, it was, I mean, I had access to some incredible orgasms with the woman, but there was just something else. And this is when I started to dive a little bit deeper into masculine and feminine. It was like, there's just something energetically that's really syncing up. I can't explain it. I did a little bit of research, but I didn't even want to, because I'm a big believer, like, just follow your direct experience. Like, we don't always have to go studying and find the text to support whatever we're having. Like, it's just your truth. Like, keep rocking with it.
Yeah.
And so I noticed that, and then I kind of reached this thing. I'm like, I'm always going to be attracted to women. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I think women are beautiful, but I'm in this position where like I actually choose to build my life with a man. And that was purely because I noticed for me in certain dynamics, a better version of me seems to come out in partnership with a man than it did
Mm-hmm.
with a woman. Um, so that was my experience.
That's that's so beautiful. Like that whole journey is so beautiful. What was it around the orgasms that you can experience? Like, why did that differ from, or how did that differ from women to men?
Honestly, don't know.
Mm.
um, because I think
Because
it's individual, you know, like
uh-huh.
everyone's your own experience. When I met my you know, I got married when I was 21. I
Mm.
met my then husband when I was 18. I'd always been quite, you know, deeply connected to my sexuality, but this was just an awakening on a whole different level.
I'm curious because you know how you were saying you were so strong in your masculine essence for so long,
Yeah.
and then you were with a woman, but then when you went with a man, you discovered the whole masculine and feminine polarity.
Yeah.
Did it shift because not only because you hadn't been with a man for years, but because you maybe had moved from the masculine dominance to the surrendered feminine? Do you think that made a difference in the sexual experience?
Mm, not solely.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, no. I would just say my experience with a woman was just like unlocking a treasure box of possibilities. Um, and yeah, I think, and I would say, I think when you cross the line of the forbidden, that is definitely going to release certain energies within your body. And you know, like I never ever thought I would be with a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like doing all the things that you just told maybe not to do or you never imagined for yourself. And that carries like a level of erotic energy that you can't manufacture.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not going to put it down specifically to the masculine feminine. Um, because even the certain dynamics that are happening in relationship don't necessarily then become what's happening in the bedroom or sexually.
Mm,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Do you think that there was polarity in the, do you think that the masculine and feminine polarity
Mm.
was in your relationship with the
Ab-
woman?
yeah, absolutely. Because at
Mhm.
that time as well, because it was sort of, you know, my own personal um, spiritual awakening and kind of what's my purpose in life, that was my focus. I was really at that stage of exploring, okay, I'm no longer a group fitness teacher. I'm no longer working in the fitness industry. What are the things I really want to be doing? How do I want to serve in the world? Like, what does my fullest self expression actually look like? That was my quest,
Mm,
which, of course, some would say that is a very masculine
mhm.
thing. He's just like, and I said he, but it doesn't really matter. But it's like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose?
Yeah.
And it would show up in certain dynamics with us um, where, you know, we would have like, you know, disagreements or arguments. And here she was like pouring her heart out to me. And I'm like, okay, what's the point? Like, I'm just wanting to reach a resolution really quickly or move on to like next because I'm trying to work. I'm trying to like
Mm,
get stuff. I'm a single mom. Like, I need to have this shit figured out.
mm,
And all I can say is that particular experience was like, compassion almost for myself because then when it came time to be in partnership with a man, I'm suddenly going, oh my God, so much of what she was bringing to the table, I'm now experiencing, but I've had the experience of witnessing it from the other angle.
ooh,
Yeah. So I'm like, I can just be a bit more gentle on myself, but I can also deliver this in a way that is going to be hopefully heard on the other end. And I can at least respect where my partner is now coming from, versus taking everything maybe so personal in the way that we did in the previous relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Do you find yourself now in polarity a lot of the time, or do you find that you masculine, or or your partner is in the feminine pole? Like, how does that dance show up for you now?
So personally for me, I'm really struggling with anything masculine and feminine. Just those terms feel really, it's almost like I'm not really resonating with them anymore, which
Mm-hmm.
has been a little bit, interesting part of the journey. I'm all for polarity though, but it's like different terms are coming out of my mouth. Um, so
What terms would you use?
yeah, so it's like, particularly when I was dating, I just remember going, I just want a man who fucking knows how to lead and lead well. Like
Mm-hmm.
I
So good.
adore certain, like, yeah, I adore, like, I was like,
Yeah.
that's masculine just felt a little bit too vague. I'm like, what am I actually looking for in someone?
Yeah.
Like, what does that translate into?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was like, man, is leadership. And it's not to say that I don't lead. I lead a lot in my work and I lead a lot with my daughter, but in partnership, I don't want that role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's also like someone making decisions. Someone can put that in, favor of leadership. But I'm like, I just like it when a man's planning things. Again, this can be in the leading. And it's not to say that I give up my right for decisions, but I just notice when suddenly all of that kind of responsibility is on me, I get stressed. And like the stressed version of me in partnership is like, just,
Mm.
I just, my radiance isn't going to come to the table. My generosity isn't coming to the table.
Yeah.
My love isn't coming to the table. Like the part of me that wants to nurture, I'm just not in my pleasure state to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, for me, I want to, so you're asking like specific terms, like for a man, definitely. It's like leadership. It
Totally.
is
Mm-hmm.
decisiveness. It is um even just the ravishing, the initiating. And I want to be more in the surrendered. I want to be more in the flow. I want to be more in just the radiance
Mm-hmm.
and the pleasure and the softness. So I started more to just, some are going to say, of course, that is the embodiment of feminine and masculine. But my experience with the feminine as well is, she, I'm going to say like the feminine can lead. I have seen feminine leadership done beautifully. I've seen, feminine get shit done beautifully. Do I necessarily think you're being masculine? No. So
Mm.
it started to just cause, it was like wires were crossing and I'm like,
Mm.
I'm getting like really confused. And it was like, just what are some other qualities that can actually, come to form in a way that you easily recognize that, help within partnership and also just who I want to be in the world. Yes, but I'm like, I just started to do a lot of learning like in partnership, because partnership really matters to me. I think relationships really matter, and I'm
Yeah.
all for discovering, I want to create a thriving relationship. What does that actually look like?
I love that. Do you think that you had to cultivate, like, if you were craving a man that was in his leadership and decisive and ravishing and all of those things, do you think that you had to cultivate the surrender side and that side of you before he was to enter your life?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you do that? How did you do that?
Mm. Um, a big turning point. Like obviously it was a gradual progression, and I think it's worthy sharing this because it wasn't just one thing. For me, it was like this, and then this led to this, and then this led to this. So I would say it all started back with like the Vipassana and the Vinyasa yoga. Like it was a slowing down. It was coming back into my body. It was like, there's an observer here, witnessing my personality instead of being my personality. And then came like the Enneagram and like really understanding, okay, what is this personality? And understanding all my blind spots and way of being that I would have declared that's just who I am. But kind of like, what is this thing about your true nature and true essence? Like, what is that? And but if that's my personality, like, hang on, that aren't they my gifts as well? So there was this interesting exploration around that. And then came the dance, which, you know, I would say was ultimately about my erotic woman. And then from there, obviously, you know, I'm doing lots of experimenting and exploring in relationship. That's the only way you can learn. It's a practice, okay? You can't just read the books and acquire all this knowledge. Like we have a joke with my friends. It's like, it's time for the rubber to hit the road now. Like, go do your field work. It's great that you understand this, but go have those conversations, go have those experiences and just see what happens. Because again, nothing is more potent and powerful and transformative than your own direct experience.
Here.
Yes. So then from there, what was really interesting came, I would say I then declared to have a wild love affair with pleasure for a whole year.
Ooh, sounds amazing.
Yeah, and it was that, you know, I've done all this amazing work, I'm learning all these great things, but somehow again it was that feeling of like, I'm almost like, the routines have become a little bit habitual. Like the routines are just starting to feel way too familiar. I can feel myself numbing out again, even though this on the surface, isn't this what you're meant to be doing? And so I was like, I'm gonna shake shit up in my life. And it was, it was the summer period here. I had, you know, my daughter has like, I think about 8 weeks of holidays. And so I declared like for at least, you know, this summer period, I am like, here comes my wild love affair of pleasure. I'm only doing all the things that feel good to me. And the leading question was like, what would pleasure do? And so I knew I was like, I'm going to say yes to all the things I usually say no to. I'm going to say no to all the things I usually say yes to. And it was so uncomfortable. I was doing things that like, you know, it was around Christmas time. And my brother's girlfriend at the time, we went over early for a Christmas breakfast, and she pours out the champagne and the juice for a mimosa. And I'm not a big drinker. And she's like, do you want a drink? And I'm like, no, thanks. And the moment like no left my mouth, I was like, I said I would say yes. And so it was like, you know, I just have the drink. And then the same thing happened. There was just all these experiences where I'd automatically just say, nope, either because it was, you know, I didn't consider it healthy enough for me. I just thought it was like, oh my God, too much effort's going to interrupt with my sleep, or, you know, time with my daughter, whatever, like just ridiculous things. And it would just be like, what would pleasure do right now? And I'm like, oh my God, pleasure would say yes to this. And so it was it was a short period, because I think in those moments, like I knew it wasn't sustainable. And of course, this wasn't the life that I wanted to live, but I could feel like I just need to like shake shit up again. I'm getting like too rigid in my, my virtues or my nobility. Like it was just this, I don't know. And then from there, pleasure, I noticed, it was like she was a shapeshifter. Some people, when they speak to me about like indulging is the word they want to use when they speak of pleasure, is like, oh my God, they're not going to know when to stop. And here's what I say to that. Pleasure is actually the practice of deep presence. And when you are deeply present with anything that is bringing you pleasure, you know when you get full. You know when you fill up. You know when you're nourished, and you know when you start to tip over into, I'm just doing this to numb out. I'm actually doing this to check out. I'm doing this as a way of abandoning like my truth and myself. You know that when you're deeply present. So to me, pleasure is a way of being deeply present, but it is just like this intense feel good and having fun and occasionally breaking your own rules. So, I would then say that was a game changer for me, because I started to prioritize pleasure differently. It was like I'm not so focused now on um there was like a hardening happening in the work. Again, I'm a single mom, so there was this need of I need to take care of shit. I've got to hold this fort down. Um, but at the same time, as I was doing lots of learning, I was like, but hang on, if I'm wanting, this particular quality in a man, like this is actually a repulsion to him. So
Yes.
um my little Miss Independent had to retire. I'm like, honey, you need to you need to get out of the driver's seat for a moment and just take a back seat. Something else is coming through. And it wasn't easy. It was quite terrifying at times. But I noticed the men I started to meet were um, not better quality. I don't like that term, but more aligned.
Yeah.
More aligned. But yeah, I had to definitely cultivate it within myself first.
Oh, yeah. And I bring that up because so often you hear people wanting to attract this certain type of guy. And so I think there's like I think you even mentioned it in a podcast with Michaela Boehm around when you want to attract a partner, look at the traits you want and then go and cultivate them yourself. And I literally used to
Yeah.
do, like, I had my list and, attributes and whatever. And then it's like, okay, cool. How do I be that? And then I realized like that when the people I was attracting in my life, like in the intimate romantic way, I'm like, why are they not anything on my list? Like, why are they not the thing that I'm actually fully wanting to be with, And I was like,
Mm.
oh, because I'm that, like I'm being that, and I'm not creating the space for the like masculine or the guy that will lead and all the things, because I'm the one that's in control all the time and the decisive one and the calling the shots, and I've connected to mission and all the things.
Yeah.
And I was so strong in that myself that I wasn't attracting it. So by experience, I didn't believe in that thing anymore, because I was like, you're not attracting that, you're attracting the opposite.
Yes. Yeah. It's such a funny concept, that one. That, what do you write the list of qualities that you want in a partnership, and then just kind of turn the mirror, and where do you need to cultivate them within yourself? I understand that that is important for your own human development and for your own wholeness. Like, I
Yeah.
think it is beautiful when you can come into partnership knowing I have strong leadership skills too, and in the partnership, I actually want you to like embody that, because you actually do that effortlessly. And I think that was the other thing I started to realize. Like, anytime I stepped into certain qualities or roles, I would just be depleted and exhausted so quickly. I didn't have the level of sustainability that I was seeing in particularly men that just did. And I was like, this is really fascinating. Yeah. And it also came from this, I don't want 50-50. Like, where on earth and why on earth have I been fighting so hard for like 50-50 in partnership? Um, and for me, that was, that came about many, many years after my divorce, once we were going through like some custody stuff, where I realized, oh my God, we keep saying this is 50-50, but reality is this isn't. And of course, that then had me, look around everywhere and going, I actually want to be I want to bring my full gifts and my full core essence. So you can, because the word that kept coming for me, I'm like, there's just a harmony that seems to exist in this space. That is what I want.
I love that concept, because I feel like the 50-50 thing does feel limiting, and it feels like I can't bring my full self because I'm hesitating or walking on eggshells around what the other person might think of that. And I feel like it's a big reflection of how people kind of live life sometimes, at a 50% capacity rate to their fullness, because we haven't spent the time to tap into our fullness yet to even know what that is, and then feel kind of shame in bringing that to the table. Like, I know I've experienced that, it's like experiencing fullness and being like keeping it to myself, because as we were speaking about before, like you think you hide your gifts, or like the things that we perceive as like a weakness or something we should keep to ourselves as not a gift, because I don't know why. Like, why do we do that?
Well, usually it would be because historically we've been shamed for expressing those gifts. And so why risk that again? why. It seems to be the part of us that no one truly accepts, or no one definitely loves, because that's
Mm,
the thing. They keep like, and it hurts. So I think there's, a part of us that's like under good reason of, nah, we know what happens when that, when we go there. And for some reason, we seem to be attracted to those people that know how to, that's me pushing the buttons,
mm.
um, and really getting us where it hurts. But it's also, I believe, because we haven't fully embraced it. Because once you do, you no longer tolerate or accept someone else shaming you for that thing. You don't stay in those kind of environments or relationships.
Yeah, it's always something to learn, right? Like I did a podcast recently with Mark Groves, and he's like, if you keep getting if you keep getting abandoned or rejected in relationships, like turn within and go, well, where am I abandoning or where am I rejecting myself? And that's the home. Like that's the home
Yeah.
to what you're wanting to fix. And when you look at that first, then all of a sudden you stop attracting those situations that cause that in the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that. And circling back now to when we talk about that sweet surrender and the um, hanging up the boots of the independent woman, or the part where you're not letting anyone in. Do you think that also opened up doors to desire and to your sexuality and to experiencing, better pleasure? Do you think all of those do you think that by letting go of that, um, what do we call it? For me, it's like forcing kind of feeling of like getting shit done,
Control.
control. Yeah. Do you think by letting go of that, it deepened all of those things?
Yeah, I would say it opened up different pathways for me to
Mm,
develop within myself. Um, which naturally, again, it's like the journey of wholeness. It's just that more of me became available. Underdeveloped cells, started to be developed. But definitely, I would say, just I speak in like pleasure pathways within my body. If I'm not the initiator all the time, if I'm not the one in control, if I'm not the seductress, then like what else is here? And does it actually bring me pleasure? I think our erotic self is really interesting, very complex. Um, I think it is where some of our deepest healing really happens. Like, she is not going to reveal shit to you until she's ready. Like, you cannot force it, because it is like a world of paradoxes in there. As you were saying, you listen to my kink series.
mm.
Um, it's like a minefield for,
Right?
yeah, and it'll have you like really look at some deep things. And this is why I believe there's something in just the simplicity, like really simple concepts of like truth telling,
Yeah.
speaking from your heart, deep listening, curiosity, compassion, courage. When we can cultivate that within ourselves, like we are more able to venture into, these different parts, like new terrain, with maybe less chances of it, tripping us up and having some really strong opinions or judgments about it.
Mm.
Um, mm,
Yeah. And so, do you think that if we have to edge our way in gently, and we have to be willing to almost sit alongside the erotic woman as she evolves, and how do we know, that she's ready to perhaps look at kink? That could be my thing of why I reacted like that way in the podcast this morning, because it's like, okay, maybe there's definitely conversations around kink coming up in different parts of my life now. Like, is that my erotic woman that's starting to go, hey, like, look at this? Or like,
yes.
how do people know?
Yes, I would say hands down, absolutely. It starts with curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a big believer that everyone has to go digging into all the realms. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we journey through different stages, when it comes to our sexuality. Like, there is a time for healing. There is a time for being really adventurous and explorative. There is a time when it's just like curious. And there's a time for just like total resting as well. And when I think of those phases, I naturally think of, I want to credit her, Jaya, who
Oh,
is, yeah, like,
blueprints, right?
yeah, the erotic
Mm,
blueprints. But she also was the one who developed like the stages of your sexuality. And I think we have to acknowledge that. But in terms of specifically what you're asking, is your erotic woman, quality of curiosity. Like
yeah.
you will just know it is that suddenly in my field a lot, or like I'm noticing it more, and a part of me is like, hmm, that's
I
it.
see you.
And I think, I always look at it as there are like a million different doors when it comes to one's sexuality or eroticism. Um, Walk in the doors like when you're called to. Doesn't mean you have to stay, doesn't mean you have to like become a master of it, but
Mm,
take a look around. And if it's not for you, you just leave.
mhm,
It's your judgments. I think this is a big thing. The less judgmental we can be about ourselves, our own desires and turn ons, and others, like the more liberated we are. So for you to then like embrace kink, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to turn the kink dial up and go for it for you to be okay with kink. It's,
mhm,
do you have judgments on others in the kinky field? And if so, like, that's the shit you need to actually deal with for you to be liberated in your own sexuality. Not the
mm,
fact that you have to dive in and become it and embrace it. Because
mhm,
if you're not called there, honestly, it's irrelevant. Why are you doing it? Because apparently that's what you're meant to be a sexually liberated or a sexually empowered woman. Honey, you just drunk the Kool-Aid. That is what it means to be doing something that you should based on what everybody else is doing. You have to stay so close to your own heart and to your own desires.
mm. Oh, I love that. What do you have, like, what do you say to people that are experiencing shame still around conversations like this, or their own sexuality, or being able to actually open the door and like get curious? And there's like that taboo and that thing. Like, what would you say to that?
Yeah, so for people that do experience it, like you will know if it's impacting um, your own ability to feel really good in your body, or particularly, usually what happens is we feel it in partnership. That's where it all like, ah. And if you want like a great partnership, then like consider this your invitation to go do some learning. Um, find people that you do trust, and it might mean like the therapist or the coach, like someone not in your immediate circle, or it could be someone in your immediate circle, but it's like just that one person to start honestly sharing is going to liberate
Mm,
so much for you already. Like I said before, when you're doing this kind of inner work, it has its own rhythm and you can't force it. You can't wish for it to go faster. Um, go gently and just stay as curious as possible. Like follow those curiosities. Suddenly, once you set that intention of, I want to experience more pleasure, or I want to open up fully sexually, suddenly the right resources, whether it's the podcasts or the books or the people or the events, are going to start coming your way. And you just kind of have to immerse yourself in them. Again, I keep saying this, but it's your direct experience where you're going to take what resonates and leave the rest. Um, and I don't believe that the goal is to become entirely shameless,
mhm,
um, or shame free. I've also learned, this is where I go, the erotic is really complex and complicated. And just
mm,
something else is that some of these emotional states are actually the catalyst and the fuel for your eroticism. So for some, the shame is, it's like, I'm not meant to do this. And I feel like maybe dirty or shameful, but holy shit, it is turning me on. So don't believe that some of these emotional responses that we have in relationship to our sexuality or our desires are to be get rid of
mhm.
or to be elevated to something higher. It's more to be embraced. And how can you embrace it in a way that leaves you feeling really liberated, um, and empowered?
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. Oh, beautiful. I could keep going. I could keep going. I could keep going. But I'm gonna just ask one more question.
Mm.
What do you feel like your doorway is right now that you're getting initiated into?
um, it is really, how good can I take it? And what's interesting is once you move beyond maybe the drama and the trouble and the confusion and the complications, is you start to embody more of what feels good. And it's a really bizarre space to be like. I'm like, who really talks about this? Suddenly you've called in one of your deepest desires, and that particular desire is no longer fueling so much of your compulsion for growth or learning. And so you kind of sit with this new, like a new experience, and you kind of go, I actually feel really good, and like really, really good. And what do I do with all this excess energy then that isn't being tied up in just just the shit that sometimes comes with relationships? It's like you go another level. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'd say that is where I'm at right now. It's just, damn, how good can I take it? um how good can I take it without feeling bad for it as well? Because it feels
When you
like
when you say take it,
mm,
what do you mean?
like, just it's like, how much love can you handle?
Uh-huh.
How much
I was
how
like,
much
are we talking about in the bedroom? I was like, what are we taking here?
No, how much pleasure can you,
Yeah.
how much abundance, how much joy, how much success? I'm definitely feeling that in the realm of
Mm.
my relationship. And so it's been a big driver though for me for many years. It's been the reason for a lot of my work. And it's this feeling of like an arrival of at least one level, one stage. And I'm now, the initiation is, well, one, how good can I take it? And what then comes next from this space? This
Oh,
level of fullness. And if pleasure is to sit in the driver's seat, like my world is shifting in really just in new ways.
I want to say a big fuck yeah to that, because so often I hear, or we're sitting in, oh, am I good enough for this? Do I deserve this? Am I worthy of this? And like, you're literally changing the game with like, how good can I take it? Like, how good can it get? And it's like, like it changes what shows up for you because of the mindset and the way that you're opening your energy to that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I love that.
Yes, definitely.
Amazing. Where can people go to, listen to your podcast, to find your work, to be amongst you and what you're doing in the world?
Awesome. You can, I'm at susannafrioni.com. That is like my online home. And from there, you usually find me on social media. Sometimes I'm even reassessing my relationship with social media. And of course, the podcast, Love, Sex, Desire.
Amazing. I so deeply loved chatting about all the things today. And thank you so much for your vulnerability and showing up and sharing this with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Beauty.